Straight up. Well, there is no Psalm 83 war. It is past and current fulfillment. And yesterday's actions by Israel, where they went into Syria and completely destroyed the Iranian infrastructure in Syria, is proof of the fulfillment in Psalm 83. So we're going to go through this, and I'm going to show you verse by verse what's really going on over there and what the word says about it. There is no Psalm 83 war. And then I'll be able to show you approximately when we should expect the wars as well. It's getting really interesting, isn't it? We're going to go through Psalm 83. Are you ready? I'm going to show you verse by verse what is happening over there right now. In verse 1, keep not thou silence, O God. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult. Let's look up the word tumult. I've already done this, but let's see. Actually, I've got this on my wall. Let me just go ahead and pull it up here for you. I've already done all the research on this. I just want to go through it with you. Okay. Now, the definition of tumult is making a loud, confused noise, uproarious. Let me go over here and let me share this to both of my walls. Share now. And that way you can see, you'll have the scriptures and you'll have my entire write-up that I've already done on this at the top of my wall. Both of my walls. I'll put it on both walls. Okay. Now, at the top of both of my Facebook walls, at Lisa Dennis Sparks and Lisa Dennis Dash Sparks, the post starts with, I think I know now when to expect the wars that are coming. This is going to be an interesting study. And I'm going to take you through this, and this gives you the whole thing right there for you to look at as an outline while we go through these scriptures together. Okay? First of all, there's no Psalm 83 war. Go through the entire chapter, and not once does it say these nations attack Israel. It simply lists all the Muslim nations and explains how they are all confederated together against Israel. It does not say they ever attack Israel in that particular chapter of Psalms. No Psalms 83 war, just an alliance against Israel in a common hatred, which is Muslims, and Israel making preemptive attacks to assure there is no ability for them to perform an effective assault. So, this chapter of Psalms is past and current fulfillment. See for yourself. Now, we're going through it one verse at a time. And in verse 2, for lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. The definition of tumult is making a loud, confused noise, uproarious. This shows the globalists, the disinherited tribe of Dan acting behind the scenes to provoke the Arab Spring, and the passionate opposition from the Muslims against the 12 legitimate tribes within the nation of Israel. Lifting up the head is their Luciferian religion. Christ shall crush the serpent's head, which is destroy the New World Order, and the serpent bruised his heel, which means they crucified King Jesus. Now, I wrote this yesterday before Israel went into Syria and destroyed the Iranian infrastructure that had been set up there. So this is really timely. I think God has an interesting sense of humor, seriously. In Psalm 83, verse 3, they have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. The wicked and disinherited tribe of Dan, which is the globalists from Europe, who control the UN, use diplomacy to hurt the nation of Israel. And they go further, targeting the Jews as a race who are spread out and hidden in all the nations of the world. In Psalm 83:4. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. This is the Muslim cry, spoken almost word for word by Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, former president of Iran. This has since also been spoken by many of the Muslim leaders among the nations. In verse 5, for they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. The Arabs have a very hard time getting along with one another. So it is quite a feat for them to agree or align together for any specific cause. But against Israel, they are all in agreement. Isn't that interesting? In verse 6, the tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites of Moab and the Hagarenes. Now, I went and I researched all of these, and I can tell you exactly who these are. The scripture starts naming the nations who are among the Muslim Confederation. Edom, that is southwestern Jordan. Moab, Jordan and eastern shore of the Dead Sea. That is Jordan at the eastern shore of the Dead Sea. These are different places here. The Hagarenes. The Hagarenes are the fringe groups of Muslims like Hezbollah, Al-Qaeda, Islamic Jihad, Al-Aqsa Brigades, Hamas. Well, actually, Hamas fits in another category. In verse 7, Gebal and Ammon and Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Gebal is northeastern Jordan. Ammon is the Jordanian capital. Amalek, that's Hamas, ISIL, radical Muslims. Philistines, that's Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, and Gath in the Gaza Strip. And the inhabitants of Tyre is Lebanon. In verse 8, Asher also is joined with them. They have holpen the children of Lot, Selah. Asher is northern Iraq. The children of Lot are Moab and Ammon. That is Palestinians with Jordanian citizenship, the children of Lot. In verse 9, do unto them as unto the Midianites, as to Sisera, as to Jabin, at the brook of Kison. In each of these cases, Israel defeated them through covert operations and surprise attacks they didn't see coming, as God delivered Israel's enemies into their hands. Now, the Midianites came against Israel in the time of Gideon. Sisera was one of their kings, and Jael, an Israelite, killed him on the sly as he was asleep. She put a tent peg right there at his temple and hammered it through his head and hammered his head into the ground. The stake went right through his head. And Jabin at the brook of Kison, these are kings. And this is a reference to what happened with Gideon and the Midianites. Now, in each of these cases, Israel defeated them through covert operations and surprise attacks. In verse 10, which perished at Endor, they became as dung for the earth. All of the enemies of Israel die and rot on the ground as an example of what happens to those who hate God and his people. In verse 11, make their nobles like Oreb and like Zeb, yea, all their princes as Zebah and Zalmunna. Oreb and Zeb were Midianite commanders, whose heads were brought to Gideon upon their defeat. Zebah and Zalmunna were two Midianite kings who were defeated and executed by Gideon. In verse 12, who said, let us take to ourselves the houses of God in possession. The Midianites came to take the religious places and relics away from the Jews, no differently than the Muslims want to take over the Temple Mount and the holy sites from the Jews today. In verse 13, O my God, make them like a wheel, as the stubble before the wind. A wheel doesn't stay anywhere, it keeps moving. The Palestinians are always moving from one refugee camp to another, never being given a home in Israel where they can plant roots or take over the land from the Jewish population. Stubble, it also is carried away by the wind. In verse 14, as the fire burneth a wood, and as the flames setteth the mountains on fire. This is shock and awe military campaign to scare them away and keep them from attacking Israel. In verse 15, so persecute them with thy tempest and make them afraid with thy storm. Israel is instructed to keep their enemies, aware of their military superiority and to demonstrate that superiority frequently enough so that their enemies are afraid of what Israel can do to them. In verse 16, fill their faces with shame, that they may seek thy name, O Lord. The children of God among the Arabs are called to follow the true God of Ishmael, the God of Abraham. Those who are not children of God among the Arabs are the radical Muslims. Allah is not the God of Abraham. And anyone who says that he is needs to go study some more. They will feel ashamed of what their nations via Islam are doing to the Jewish people as a race, because they are God's people as well. And they will restore their relationship with Israel's God. Now in verse 17, let them be confounded and troubled forever. Yea, let them be put to shame and perish. For the radical Muslims, the children of evil, they will be confounded, which means they are thrown into confusion and disorder. They are surprised and bewildered, perplexed and amazed. They never figure out how Israel is able to always win. They will die when they come against the tiny nation of Israel, even though there are so many enemies surrounding it. In verse 18, that men may know that thou, whose name alone is Jehovah, art the most high over all the earth. They far outnumber Israel in both land mass and population, but Israel is always going to be defended by God, who neither slumbers nor sleeps. See? No Psalm 83 war. The Muslims won't surround Jerusalem until the desolation or defiling of the temple is close. Now, let me get you the scripture in Luke showing that when the timing of when the armies gather against Jerusalem. Let me show you. Okay. Now I know that's in Luke. I'm going after the word desolation. Here we go. Luke 21:20. And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. The word desolation is a particular word used to describe the defiling of the temple. So what this means, this means that close to when the temple will be defiled, that's when you're going to see these armies gathering around Jerusalem, surrounding Jerusalem. Now, we show the temple being defiled January 20th, 2019 on the prophetic timeline that I have put together, my theory. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but this is it is a very good possibility that it could be, because we're using Daniel's equation to plot these events on the timeline. So if you take Daniel's equation, says the very end of the generation is August 17th, 2022. You subtract 45 days, and then you have the end of the tribulation period of 7 years, July 3rd, 2022. You back up 1,260 days, which is the entire second half, and you get January 20th, 2019, and the final blood moon of the series of 7 shows up the very next day. The sun shall turn dark and the moon to blood before that great and terrible day of the Lord come. The great and terrible day of the Lord is the second half. So you've got your blood moons, all 7 prior to the last one comes right there as the second half starts. Okay, so this is interesting. So we show the temple being defiled January 20th, 2019. So that would mean the Muslims don't gather around Jerusalem until after the evacuation of the children and the Gentile believers with the temple inside them takes place. So Gog Magog is way later on in the second half. Now, this war where Jerusalem is surrounded, Gog Magog comes from the north. You've got Jerusalem surrounded by armies just prior to the defiling of the temple, according to the scripture I just gave you. So I really think that we're not looking at any major World War III kind of situation while the children and the Gentiles are still here. I think these wars are going to hold off until close to when the temple's defiled. And see, that's after the evacuation. The rapture of the believers, the best possibility for that is September 10th or 11th of this year. This year. I know, it's amazing, isn't it? The Gog-Magog wars later on in the second half. So what I'm telling you is that Israel may be fighting here and there on their borders. You know how they do. They'll go in, they'll strike Syria, they'll go strike Hamas. But it doesn't blow up into World War III. Even last night, Israel went into Syria with 20 missiles and totally annihilated the entire Iranian infrastructure inside Syria. So see, they've done it again. They're instructed by God in the word, go in covertly. Go in and just get rid of it. Go in and just get rid of their infrastructure in Syria. And that's what they've done. Okay. Now, no, I really don't think any major wars will be breaking out in the Middle East until after the evacuation. That's how it looks from my current perspective and with the information we have at this time being considered. So as you can see, there is no Psalm 83 war, is there? You've heard, oh, Psalm 83 war, Gog Magog, Armageddon. I've even used that term. But if you, I was asking God about all of this. And he led me to go through Psalm 83, and he just showed me plain as day, there's no war in Psalm 83. No war. All it is telling us that all the Muslims are confederate against Israel, and that Israel goes in covertly when there's a threat, they go in covertly and do surprise attacks with a shock and awe kind of thing that gets rid of the threat and keeps war from starting. Iran isn't doing a thing about it, are they? And they won't either. They're afraid, and they should be afraid. They talk a big talk, but they sure walk a little bitty walk, don't they? They say they hate Israel, but Israel goes in there and steals all their original documents of their nuclear program, and they aren't doing anything about it, are they? They won't either, because they know Israel could totally annihilate them. They know that. They know that. So they're all talk. All talk. So does anybody have any questions? We've just got about 3 minutes in this segment left. I want to answer your questions where Psalm 83 is concerned, or any others. Hi, Jan. Hi, Courtney, Chuck, Vicky, Jan, Eric, Greg, Amanda, Victoria, Chris, Dale, Linda, Daniel, Blaze, Daryl, Don, Terry, Mike. Let me go over here, and I don't see any questions. Let me go over here on YouTube. Hi, Vonda, Shirley, Heath. Hi, Christmas bells. Thank you. That's really sweet. Thank you. Everybody doing okay? I'm really glad to see you guys. We're going to get into a lot of cool things today. And the Psalm 83 war is just the, that's the icing on the cake. One of them. Well, we're going to put some decorations on it too. So we've got more really good stuff coming. May just be the plate. And then we're going to build on it from there. But we're going to go into our study. And when we come back after the break, we're going to get into our study in Proverbs. We are now in, let's see, where are we? We got through chapter 3. Yes, we're starting in chapter 4 in Proverbs today. And when we come back from the break, that's what we'll do. We'll get into our study in Proverbs chapter 4. Then after that, we're going to be going back to our study in Genesis. That is such a cool study. We finished up our verse-by-verse study of the New Testament, and now we are in Genesis. We're going to be starting, let's see, where are we? We are starting in chapter 5 today. Is that correct? Yes, it is. We're starting in Genesis chapter 5 on our Genesis study, and chapter 4 in Proverbs for our Proverbs study. And any questions you have, I'll be glad to answer them for you, whether they're related or not. There are no stupid questions. Okay? There is no such thing as a stupid question. Please ask anything you wish, and I will be glad to try to answer it for you. Okay? And give you a scriptural answer. Now, is everybody doing okay? I love you guys. Thank you for taking the time to come and hang out with me and learn. We're going to, now if you are welcome, I want to mention to you, you are welcome to print, share, copy, download, whatever, any of my posts and articles on my walls, and also the videos. You're welcome to share them anywhere you wish. And let's see. And if you have any prayer requests or anything like that, I'm always glad to pray if you need for me to pray. Let's see. We're going to take a real quick break now, and then when we come back, we're going to get into our Proverbs study. It's going to be fun. Don't go away. Straight up.